Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you and welcome to Islam and Life with me, Tariq Ramadan, broadcasting from London. In today's show, we ask the question, what can be done about France's anti-hijab environment?
Earlier this year, a young Muslim woman was convicted over a dispute with police officers who arrested her for wearing a full-face Islamic veil or niqab. Although the face veil is a pre-Islamic cultural practice with no basis in the Quran, the incident has reignited the debate as to whether France truly is a free society for Muslim women. Commentators have expressed deep concern over the police's brutal response to the young Muslim woman. There have been several cases of harassment and persecution against Muslim women, including students and teachers in France and in the wider continent for wearing the hijab. This is despite the hijab being a perfectly legal clothing item. France is home to the largest Muslim population in Western Europe. This week on Islam and Life, we ask, what can be done about France's anti-hijab environment?
The situation in France is quite worrying. As we heard, it started in '89 with the whole controversy around this headscarf, and then year after year, every 6 months we have a new controversy. We had a new law in 2004, and then recently a new law about the niqab, the veil covering the face, prohibited in the streets. And add to this so many other stories where we had women being targeted in the streets, women being subject to violence in the streets because they were visible. The new visibility of Muslims in France, it's a problem, but at the same time we have a legal system that is now put to target the Muslims in the way where it's not possible to go with the headscarf in school, it's difficult to be visible as a Muslim, to build a mosque in the country. France is central to the discussion in Western Europe because it's a specific country, a specific environment, but its influence is quite important. So we have to understand what is the situation in France, why is it happening in France, and what are the reasons and what could be the responses coming from the Muslims and the French Muslims in France. And to answer all these questions, I'm joined by my guest, Islamic and political commentator, Dr. Sayyid Inayatullah Andrami. Thank you so much for being with us here. It's a very important discussion because very often in Western Europe and even in the West as a whole, France is playing a very important role. It's an exception, and at the same time, it's a country which wants to impose, in a way, a very specific perception and saying we know about Islam much more than the others and we know what are the problems. So if we start with France, what should we know? What is happening in this country which is so different in a way from other countries in Western Europe?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would not prefer taking a narrow view of focusing at French or France as a nation or a national character. But if I go down that line, there is something to it also. For example, you can see that they are very much keen about French language, and they had a legislation passed that we will see what sort of intrusions have gone into French language and cleanse it, make it pure French. That's something that looks very stupid, but that's what they did. So this is, if you call some sort of national character, but we should not look at it only on with that angle. That's a very myopic, very narrow angle. I think I have been watching this since it has been happening. I think there are the most fundamental level which the French government has often articulated is the conflict between what they call religion and secularism. They have been very often talking of secularism and being purely secular. Now, this is debatable, that they are pushing a huge agenda under the garb of secularism, but they are making the dichotomy between religion and secularism, and they think hijab is a symbol of religion. Hijab is religion in public. Hijab is religion speaking and expressing itself in public. And hijab is really a very manifest thing, very obvious. I mean, I sometimes feel for my women folk, for my sisters or for Muslim women, that they have to really come out, and they come out with a very obvious sort of declaration. They speak. When they wear hijab, they speak.
Yeah, so let me come to this, because you started by saying something which is quite interesting, that we might not want to focus on this, but there could be something which has to do with a mindset, which is our exception among all the other nations. And we have what, the very essence of the language, but also what was called, resisting the American influence, saying this is our cultural exception. So we have to protect that. So there is something which is a sense of the unity of the Republic is to be strong with our identity. And what you are adding with something which is important is that the perceived identity is based on this laïcité, which is secularity or secularism, versus the visible religious presence in the public sphere. So rejecting this and say we finished with Judaism and with Christianity, now we have to deal with Islam because it's the new player on the ground with this new visibility. So now, in the name of this, what we are facing is two things. A discourse that sometimes is very close to racism and Islamophobia. And on the other side, on the legal ground, is discriminations. So many French Muslims, they don't know how to deal with this. And we have even leaders saying, okay, we need to be invisible. What you are saying is that there is a new visibility. So what should be the answer of Muslims facing France, accepting this, or going very far by saying there is in your mindset and there is in the way you deal with the issue something which is close to racism, prejudices, and structural discrimination? What would be your take on this when you are saying, I fear for my sisters that they are visible, and this is true? So what should be the strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, this is, when we say they should accept it, what should they accept?
That's the point,
it's
exactly.
Not only the ideological argument, it is the practical impact they are facing. And it has translated itself into a sort of persecution. Just some months back, we saw a woman had a miscarriage because she was assaulted in Paris. So it has come to almost, it has translated itself into racist attacks and racist discourse. So now we have to think that what are we going to accept? Because on one side, it's not, for Muslims, it's not merely symbolic. I'm not talking of any full niqab. I'm saying the modest dress, the crux of from the Muslim point of view, from the Sharia point of view, the crux is modest dress. For men as well as women.
So facing back with this, knowing the atmosphere of France, now say, okay, you have no choice. At the end, these are the requirements. And as a Muslim, if you want to wear the headscarf, you should be allowed, because freedom of conscience means that at the end, the requirements are going as far as I decide for myself what is my practice. You have some women, and I was myself attacked by some women by saying, I don't think, as you are saying, I don't think that the niqab is an Islamic prescription. Say, this is my right, so I should be free to do that. Now, at that point, what should be the position of the French Muslims, in your view, when it comes to facing the government, facing law, facing the legal structure, the legal systems, telling you, school, no way, streets, no way. Sometimes even getting a mask, it's very difficult because you have people preventing. And you have the populist trends that we can see now in the UK, but they are very powerful with the Front National in France today. So what should be the strategy, and what does this reveal about the French society?
As I told you, this this operates on more than one levels. One I told was the religion versus secularity or secularism. But the other thing is also, which I have noticed in French debates, the other thing is the view of the social philosophy. They think the Anglo-Saxon, they call it Anglo-Saxon model of communities. Now you will see in this country, there are communities rather than individuals. In Muslims also there are they call Muslim communities. Now in community, individuals can have their way and they are a part of community. In France, they say that we want to live together. And this
as
comes
individuals together.
As individuals together.